Hello and welcome to episode 7 of Rambles. Now, this one it might be a little bit of a shorter one. I'm only saying that because this is a really important topic, but I feel like I really want to condense it because it's just too important to like overdo. And I think that I really want to make sure I keep it at a length where I just don't overdo it. Like I keep it real, keep it honest, keep it fun, lighthearted. I'm trying to be more lighthearted about how I handle these and not make it so like professional. It doesn't have to be that perfect, you know. It's whatever, you know. So this episode is going to be on accountability, and I don't know. I feel like this is just such a big topic for me that it's something that I would definitely like to elaborate more on in the future. But I definitely want to just hit on it and just ramble about it a little bit and just get my thoughts out about it. And then worry about condensing it into something a bit more substantial in the future. That's basically how this episode is going to flow. So if you're into that, feel free to stick around, enjoy yourself, sit down, relax, and just enjoy me rambling, I guess. um, so first off, my biggest thing I like to do is go over some definitions so that we're working with, an understanding of these words and terms that we can agree upon. Like we have a basis for our understanding of like what is accountability. And I think the biggest questions we need to ask ourselves are like, okay, there's accountability, then there's responsibility. People usually throw these words around interchangeably, you know, what do they really mean when it comes down to the practical sense of I'm applying it, like I need to be accountable in my life or I need to be responsible, like what does that mean, and I think that's what we should focus on. So the most basic definition that doesn't really give you anything is the fact or condition of being accountable or responsibility. It's almost like responsibility is being used as a synonym in this situation. And they are very similar, but I think the differences are very important to distinguish as well. So, okay, so what is accountable? All right, so we got, that definition doesn't help us that much. We're trying to figure out what the condition of being accountable is. So we're going to go to, okay, what's accountable then? Okay, so accountable means obligated to explain, justify, and take responsibility for one's actions and to answer to someone, such as a person with more authority. Now, these are just definitions I'm just looking up through Google, so don't take these like, oh my God, this is 100% what I have to interpret it as. No, no, these are just definitions we work with, and we can always, be flexible with our definitions and our understandings of words because I truly believe that, the circumstances they're the ones that really determine what something means in that context. There is no one way to look at any one thing. There's always going to be a different angle or a different perspective you can look at it, a different shade or a different part of the spectrum or a different, number on the dial. However word you phrasing or wording you want to use, there's always going to be something specific that relates to, you know, this specific situation. So that's why as a person, it's, your responsibility, hey, using the word there, to recognize how the scenarios in your life apply to your understanding of these concepts, which is why what really matters at the end of the day is how you apply your understanding to your practical and everyday life and everyday decisions. Um, so this is just a basic definition I got for accountable, you know. So which remove the such as a person with more authority. It doesn't matter if the person has more authority in our situation. We're trying to create a situation where we understand what these words mean a bit more. You know, it doesn't matter if someone with more authority is, telling us we should be obligated. The point is we feel accountable should have something to do with obligation, an obligation to explain, justify, or take responsibility for one's actions. Another definition we can work with is that a person is subject to the obligation to report, explain, or justify something responsible or answerable. So that means you're expecting something. There's an expectation from someone who's accountable, you know. Um, and then a really nice definition I like for responsible is answerable or accountable as for someone within one's power, control, or management. So that kind of also gives you that authority figure type feeling where it's like, oh, I'm supposed to be working for this company, so I'm responsible for these tasks that they give me because, they have authority over me. And I think that really helps to get the differences between them down. And I feel like both of them kind of like really, the differences between them really matter. And what I'm going to explain. So with responsibility, it's more about like something you did, a task or a, a job or something that you had to do. You know, you're responsible for that task. You're responsible for that goal or that objective or that, mission. You know, So like there could be multiple people responsible for the same thing. So let's say you're responsible for something at work, you're working in a group and a team and you need to get this job done. People can say, okay, you're responsible, your whole team is responsible for completing that task. You know, you're responsible for this. I'm giving you this task or this objective, like this goal, and you're responsible for completing that or finishing that to these levels of standards. And I feel like thinking of responsibility in those terms really helps, um, because multiple people can be responsible. And that's really important distinction. Um, so I think one of the biggest things that I run into when people are like blaming each other in like a lot of social conflict, they're thinking in their mind that only someone is to blame, right? Someone is to blame. Someone's responsible. And then if someone else is responsible, that means I'm not responsible. I'm free of responsibility for this or what happened or anything like that. And I feel like that's where a lot of people start to get mixed up. So reminding yourself that responsibility is something that is can be, multiplied. There can be multiple people responsible for the same thing happening, and or the same goal or the same task or the same objective, however you want to word that. you know it's usually not just ever going to come down to just one person being responsible for something. It's just not how life is. And then accountability takes it a bit further, where accountability is almost what happens after that task or that goal or whatever it is that you are responsible for is completed. So something gets done, something gets accomplished, you have this thing and you're like, okay, you are responsible. And then afterwards, it's the results of whatever that is that you're accountable for. So it's whatever happens after the fact. It's the consequences, the result, the the it's kind of like the difference between like the impact and you know if you are directly, some people feel like, oh no, if I directly impact this person, that's much worse than my intent. If you actually, if I intended, impact versus intent concept, where it's like, if I intended to do this and then I accidentally really cause you some harm, that's different than, if I you know really didn't have any intention on hurting you and then somehow you accidentally get hurt or something. Those should be approached differently, and that's a whole concept on its own. But I feel like it also can be related to responsibility and accountability in the sense where, you know, responsibility is more so talking about the intentions behind what you want to do, what you want to accomplish, and what you're supposed to be doing. And then accountability is more about the impact of whatever it is that you were responsible for, and realizing that, you know, there are consequences to our actions, our choices, our decisions. So whether we intended this or not, this happened and you have to be accountable for that. I think that's a really good way to differentiate them. But I think accountability is the one that I want to focus on because it's the one that has to do with the consequences, the result, the after. And I think that that is where most of the learning and most of the growth as a person should come from. You can give your kid tons of responsibilities and tasks and chores and things that they need to do. But if they, you know, if they can't follow through with that and you don't hold them accountable, what good does that do? You can be like, oh, you didn't really do any of your chores. Okay, well, whatever. You could be like that, and then they're like, okay, well, responsive. I don't have to really give a frick. I don't have to really care because I'm not going to be held accountable for any of these actions. I'm not going to be held accountable if I mess up. And, I think that accountability part is what really matters when it comes to learning to do better. If you can never hold yourself or anyone else accountable for anything, I feel like you can't really, it's not easy to, really put a lot of importance on having a responsibility because no one's going to really hold you to it in the end, at the end. So I think it's more so about how you respond and take ownership over the results or over whatever happened or the consequences of whatever it is that occurred. And they're both really important, yes, but accountability is what I'm going to mainly focus on. I wanted to differentiate those two in the way that I kind of visualize it and, see if anyone can relate to that and kind of, have that help them with their, mental health and growth. Um, I will say, when I was younger, I had to eventually come to terms with the fact that I wasn't perfect and that I made mistakes and contributed to a lot of the pain I experienced. I would say that obviously I didn't have the most terrible life ever, but I would say my adolescence was pretty emotionally depressive. That was a very constant theme in my life, and that caused me a lot of trauma and, probably PTSD and a lot of, it probably led to a lot of the things I struggle with on a daily basis as an adult. And I had to look back and think about that and be like, I see that there's a lot of things that were outside of my control. And in my mind, I tell myself I'm not responsible for every single thing that happened to me, you know? But there are some things that I can be responsible for. I can take responsibility for. And I feel like that's important. That's an important step. But um, it wasn't until I went further than that change actually came into my life. Um, so like holding yourself accountable, it doesn't necessarily mean you take full responsibility for everything that happened. But it's an important part of the growth process. I think it's a necessary part of the growth process. Um, so I'll give an example. I'm always talking about the abuse situation, but it's just a perfect example in in so many situations, right? You know, the biggest thing I fear, like if I ever imagine I hurt someone, the biggest thing I try to do is start defending myself because I know that my intentions are always usually pure. Like I usually have very good intentions. But what I often forget is that, the impact is often what matters the most. That's what's going to have that long-term effect on somebody. You can have the best intentions ever and cause incredible amount of harm and be completely unaware of it. And to me, recognizing that you can be responsible for something without intending anything negative is really important with growth and as a person. Um, so like if I know that in abuse situations, you know, I can react to being put in that situation in a really negative way. So, like, I know that I didn't say all the nicest things ever to anyone who's ever been abusive towards me. Obviously, there are moments where I said things that I don't, I'm not proud of and I'm not happy with, and I didn't think was right in the moment. Of course, obviously, right? I know that I take responsibility for that. I know that that happened. I'm fully aware of that. And I know what was right and what was wrong. And I can look on that and learn from that. But what I want to focus on is the negative impact of the abuse that their abuse had on me. And I feel like that is where they need to hold themselves responsible and accountable for the damage, especially the long-term damage that can have on a person. I feel like that's where the difference comes from. I can see that I behaved in certain ways, but I also can see that I'm not fully responsible for all that. I'm responsible for the things I said and, controlling my emotions and all of that stuff. But if you're adding in all that context, some of that responsibility is on that other person who's bringing that toxic and negative behavior into my life. And they need to take responsibility for that. And they need to be held accountable for that damage that they're causing on somebody else. Um, I can sit there and recognize and take responsibility for things that I may have done that contributed to what happened, but still realize that that other person needs to also do the same and take accountability for the long term effects that they would have, that their actions have had. So, if you've been abusive to somebody, that is something that has some very long term effects on somebody. You can't just, diminish the effects of that. That's something very serious. And even if you think you weren't doing that, if someone feels that from you, you have to realize that that's a moment for you to take a step back and realize that, I was responsible for making someone feel that way. And I have to then take accountability. I have to take that next step. And a lot of people, either they don't take responsibility, so they don't get anywhere, or they take responsibility and then they don't want to be accountable, so they don't hold themselves accountable to it. And it just causes a lot of conflict, a lot of hurt, a lot of dilemma long term. And I feel like that's something that I've faced a lot. And in my life, I've tried to challenge myself and be like, you know, I want to look at these really difficult situations in my life, situations where I was hurt, where I felt like I was trying everything to do what was right and it just didn't work out, and realize that I can take responsibility for some of the things that didn't go the way that I would have hoped it would have went. Some of the ways I behaved, or some of the choices I made, or some of the words I used. You know, I can take responsibility for my actions, my choices, and my decisions without fully blaming myself for the entirety of what happened to me. I can separate those things in my mind. And I think that's a really important process for me, because upon doing that, I realized that, you know, without fully blaming myself, I can still hold myself accountable for some of the pain I experienced in life, and realize that there are things that I can change. There are things that I can improve. There are things that I can work on that will allow me to be a better, healthier, happier person. But that doesn't mean I'm blaming myself for what happened. I feel like that's really important. It's a really important distinction to make if you've ever been through a lot of trauma, and obviously you're not to blame for how other people treat you and how other people hurt you. All this, we know this, right? But I think it sometimes takes a conscious effort, like to sit there and be like, really explore those experiences and be like, hey, in that moment, I take responsibility for that choice, and that probably didn't make anything better in that situation. That probably made things a bit worse. Um, that probably didn't help. I was definitely very anxious. I overreacted in that situation. And being able to do that and realize and take responsibility for the actions you take and the impact that they have is good. And then I think that next step is holding yourself accountable. So that means that I'm going to do things in my life to make sure that I'm not repeating these bad habits. And that doesn't tell me that, oh, it's your fault, that you're to blame for what happened, or it's your fault this happened. No, no, no. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that means that, you were partially responsible for what happened. And there are things that you can do better that will make your life better in the future, your life and the life of those around you better in the future. And that's a way for you to not completely go, put yourself down and be like, oh, it's my fault it happened, or I blame myself and all that, which is clearly not healthy and not right to think. And it allows you to just make peace with what happened, make peace with the fact that, you know, you can take responsibility for things without being completely to blame. And without even using the word blame, just take responsibility and then go that next step and hold yourself accountable for these things. Answer. be answerable, as we had in those definitions above. Answer to that responsibility. I'm responsible for this. Now I need to answer to that. Now I need to do the work to make that better. And I feel like that's something that I had to really sit with. And honestly, I feel like I was sitting with that for like a few years, even like definitely in my college years. Because in my college years, I was very inspired to like learn and like do as much as I could. And I had these high hopes and expectations, and I wasn't being realistic with myself, with what I could accomplish. I wasn't being I didn't understand myself fully. I didn't know the extent of my diagnoses. I didn't know who I wanted to be. I didn't know who I really thought I was currently. At that time, I was still masking, hiding a lot of who I was, and I was holding back on like a lot of this information I have on myself. I had to do a lot of learning about myself. Like, who am I? What do I want? Like, what did I do in life that made, or contributed to the experiences that I had in life? For a long time, I was in this very deep and negative blaming mindset where it was always somebody else. It was always, they did this to me, they did that to me. And there's truth to that. There is truth to that. But there also is truth to the fact that there are things that, there are habits that I built up, there are coping mechanisms, there are things that I developed, after, going through these experiences that just contribute to the way I feel, contribute to, the choices I continue to make, the habits I've developed, the way I cope, and those are things that I can look back on and take responsibility for. I can be like, hey, I didn't do that right, or I didn't make that decision the right, to the best of my ability, or I definitely have built up a habit here that has been toxic for me, and realize that, I understand that it's not my fault. I understand that it's not my, like, I'm not the one who put myself in these circumstances that allowed these things to develop, but it still happened, and I have to take responsibility for that. And I feel like that really started happening to me. I think it happened to me like after college, honestly. Like I realized that college was just not the answer in life that I was expecting it to be. So I was expecting like everything in college to just make sense, and all it did was like confuse me even more. Like I didn't know what I really wanted. I know I love learning things, but it's like, how do I go about that? How do I go about that without putting myself in so much debt? Like how do I pursue what makes me happy but be content, and find, you know, support myself, support my people I care about. Like, how do I do all this? I just don't know. And college didn't give me the answer. Um, so I fell into like a deep depression after college, I remember, and I couldn't find work. And I was just like, I was working with my friend for a while, with his little startup company he had. And it was a really low period of time for me because I had no idea what I was going to do with the rest of my life. I didn't know what I wanted or needed, or I just didn't know. I was just lost in that period of time. And during that time of depression, I started realizing and looking, into my past and being like, there's a lot of things that I did that contributed to me ending up here. You know, I let my parents put a lot of pressure on me in ways that I shouldn't have. Like I thought I had to go to college. I thought I was supposed to do everything my parents wanted me to do to please them. So I was living my life to please my family, my parents, instead of living my life to please myself or be happy with the choices I'm making. And that's a choice that I was making. That's an active choice. And I had to be responsible. I had to take responsibility for those choices and the impact that those choices had in my life. I made the choice to prioritize what I thought my parents wanted over what I truly needed for a long time. And as a result, that put me and that, put me in college for many years, and it made me lost afterwards. It made me confused and struggle about who I am, who my identity is. This basically have an identity crisis. And that was a big stage of my life growing up, and I have to realize that, that's something I have to take responsibility for. That happened, and I made those choices. Um, I see that now. I don't fully blame myself, of course, because the circumstances I grew up in definitely encouraged that, that mindset. But I still can recognize that I have, I had to overcome that mindset. I had to see that that's something I can change. I'm responsible for how I feel about things, the choices I make and why I make them. I'm responsible for that. No one else is going to help me with that. So my parents aren't going to just one day wake up and be like, "Hey, you should just really start living for yourself," because they have no idea what I'm going through. They don't know what I'm struggling with. They don't know that I'm living that way. Um, they're not me, so they can't be responsible for that. They might be responsible for the circumstances they raised me in, but that's about it. I'm still responsible for how I feel about things. So I had to, sit there and confront that and be like, hey, look, I might have made some poor choices, and I know why I made some of these choices. And, sometimes in some ways it gave me some good results. Like I have a college degree. If I didn't feel pressured to go to college, I might not have that. That's something I can be happy about. I have some debt I have to worry about. That kind of sucks. But, there's positives and there's negatives to the choices I've made in life. But I have to accept that I made those choices at the end of the day. No one was forcing me to do these things. I did them because I thought I had to. And that was a mentality I built up. And I have to take responsibility for the choices I made in life. And the accountability part, which is the part that I feel matters the most, is that I'm like, okay, I'm going to hold myself accountable. I made these choices. I'm responsible for that. Now I want my life to change. I want my life to be better. So I started making changes and recognizing that the things that need to change are the things that I didn't put enough thought or care into. I wasn't being fully responsible of them at the time in the past. And now I need to be. So now it's like, instead of thinking, what do my parents want me to do? I need to think about, what do I want to do? What do I want in life? What do I want to accomplish? What are my goals? How do I want to get there? And that's me taking responsibility for my own life. And that's me holding myself accountable and saying, I'm not going to sit there and be like, my parents need to fix this for me. I need to fix this for me. You know? Your parents might support you in some ways, and my parents definitely supported me financially for a very long time. Because it was definitely rough, for a while. Um, but at the same time, I realized that I have to make these changes in order for me to, in order to properly hold myself accountable for the choices I've made and the circumstances I've put myself in. And I can do that and simultaneously not be like, it's all your fault. You fricked up. You let your parents control your life. You suck. No, we're not doing that. We're not putting ourselves down here. We're saying there's things that you can hold yourself accountable for. There's choices you made that you need to be, hold yourself, you're responsible for those choices that you made. But you also can understand that you weren't fully responsible, and that now that you realize that, it's up to you to take that next step to hold yourself accountable and be like, hey, I'm going to do this better, or hey, I'm going to make this change. And so for me at the time, after like being depressed after college for a while, I think what I first got motivated to do was like start working out, because I felt like physically I just wasn't the way I wanted to be. I felt tired and fatigued and like just demotivated all the time. And I realized that, if I want that to change, I have to do something. And to me, that's holding myself accountable. Okay, this happened in my life. All right, it is what it is. What do I do now? You bring the accountability into the picture, you start to see what you can change, what you have control of, what you have the ability to impact. So I had the ability to start working out. I had so much free time because I wasn't, working at a full-time job. So I could work out. I could put time aside to try to study and figure out what I want to do with my life. And that's what I started doing. And I started being very strict with that. It was hard at first, but I took small steps and that stuff slowly got easier. Um, I also started thinking about things that I've always wanted to do that I just would tell myself, nah, you can't do that, or you're not good enough, or you're not ready, or you can't, you're just not able to, or all these negative things that I would tell myself and be like, what do I really want to do? Like, there are things that I really wanted to do. Like, I wanted to make content, I wanted to stream, I wanted to speed run, I wanted to play more video games, I wanted to learn more things. There are all these things I really wanted to do that I just wasn't doing because I wasn't holding myself accountable for the things that I cared about in life. I wasn't holding myself accountable for living the life I wanted. And that step is what really helped me eventually make the progress that I needed to make, because realizing that, hey, you know, I have to hold myself accountable for the choices I made in life and for the circumstances I'm in order for me to actually find the happiness I'm seeking. So I started working out, I started doing more, and eventually my life started changing. Like, I got a job that I love and it's just such a great work environment. I started streaming, I'm making content. I wouldn't be here doing this right now if I didn't go through this process. There's a lot of growth that went on in my life, and it's something to look back on and be like, wow. But at the same time, I'm sharing it because I want people to realize that it's possible. It's very possible to do. I was like 100% a different person after college ended, and slowly but surely I started to hold myself accountable for these things and start to do the things I wanted to do and not allowing anything else to interfere with that. And, you know, that's a mixture of taking responsibility for my life and holding myself accountable for my life. And I feel like both of those things are extremely important when it comes to any personal development or self improvement or growth that you're going to have in life. You have to realize that even though you're not responsible for everything, you're still fully accountable for your life. Always. You're fully accountable for the consequences of what happens in your life. You're the only one who can, fix that or make changes there or, make improvement there. Um, you need to be the person to do that. And there's not always going to be someone else there to help you with that. And I had to make that choice. Another area where I recognized that this was something really important was with my mental health. And I want to get to that after a little break. But yeah, I appreciate y'all for listening to this first part. But I definitely want to break into my mental health a little bit before we close. Um, I think that's really important. But um, my experience after college was just a really big turning point in my life. And I think that right there is probably the biggest growth I've had as a person in my entire life. And I'm hoping for more big growth spurts like that. But I think that, these concepts like accountability, responsibility, like really internalizing these things and applying it to my life and what I can do to make my life better has really changed my life. And when it comes to the mental health, it's just been even more substantial. So I'm going to play some poly theme music and get back into it after the fact. All right, all right. So we just listened to some polythene, took a little short break. Hopefully, you got to stretch yourself out a little bit and feel a little bit more comfy. I don't know, whatever you're doing. I don't know what the hell you're doing, but hopefully that gave you a little bit of time you needed. We're about to dive into some mental health stuff right now, and it's gonna be a little bit more intense. But yeah, the same constants I was applying to like taking action in my life when it came to like figuring out what I wanted to do with my life, doing things I wanted to do that actually made me happy, like living for myself. Um, I had the same growth with my mental health. And I feel like this happened while I was in college, which is why it's so interesting. It happened while I was in college, but it also like really started to develop the more like after college because of all that other thought I started putting into my life about holding myself accountable and for who I am and who I want to be and my own happiness. Um there was a point in college where I realized that I was struggling severely with, you know, just keeping it all together. Like I was just struggling with my mental health. I was, slipping in and out of depression, dealing with severe anxiety, and just not the kind of person I wanted to be. And I was like, I think college is just putting a lot of pressure on me. And I wanted to seek help. I wanted to get more help for myself because I knew that in the current state that I was in, I was not going to be okay. And that a part of me is be like, I have to be responsible for the fact that I'm not okay like this. So if I have the accessibility or I have the resources to get help, I need to do that. I need to take responsibility for myself. I need to hold myself accountable and take those steps. So I did start to do that. I went out to seek therapy. Um, because I still had, I had access to insurance and like resources to do this stuff. So I went to go to therapy and I tried to, push for a diagnosis because, as you know, I'm autistic and most likely have ADHD and other learning disabilities. Um, I was really trying to get my autism diagnosis because I had known I was autistic since high school at that point. But I just was one of those people who was like, I just live my life being self diagnosed. It's not going to matter that much. But when I was in college, I realized that I was just struggling way too much and that maybe a lot of these, maybe my autism was disabling me more than I realized and that I couldn't just keep pretending it wasn't a factor. So, I went to therapy, then I went to see a psychologist, excuse me, and eventually got diagnosed. And from then on, I started to continue to seek therapy. I've seen multiple therapists, I've seen multiple psychologists, uh, I've seen multiple psychiatrists. And, through, all the help and doing my own research, me taking responsibility for my mental health journey, holding myself accountable to the way that that goes, that how that develops. I've done my research. I've learned a lot from a lot of the people I've talked to, and I'm on some of the best medication I've ever been on. Things are actually really helping me and improving me on a day to day basis. But I had to take that first step to even get here, and I had to keep taking those steps to get to where I am right now. And there's no shame in needing medication or, you know, requiring those things to be okay. And that was a barrier I had to tackle for a while because like I was like, I want to feel like I don't need help to be okay. I want to feel like I can do it all on my own, but that just wasn't realistic. And I really want to give encouragement to anyone out there who feels that way, where it's like, I have to prove to myself and the world that I can do this without getting help, without seeing myself as disabled. But that's just, your internalized ableism, playing, you know, playing with you. There's nothing wrong with being disabled. It's not a dirty word. It's not a bad thing. It's not evil. It doesn't make you a failure. It doesn't make you less than anybody else. It just is what it is. And I had to just learn to accept that, it is what it is. And I feel like accepting yourself is also a part of taking responsibility for your life, the things that are going on in your life. It is what it is. You know, I might be disabled more than I thought, but that's my life. That's it. And I still have to hold myself accountable and do what I need to do to make my life better, be a better person, you know. So I took those steps, and now I'd say, I still go to therapy, and I found medications that I'm good with that help me with my focus and depression and anxiety. And I'm still working on things in therapy actively to keep improving things. I see this as a continuous process that I will be going through for the rest of my life. It doesn't just stop because I'm on meds now. Like, this is a continuous process that will, keep reoccurring all the time. I'll always be confronting new challenges and finding new ways to grow and improve myself. And it's just a journey, and I'm just excited for the journey. I don't see it as looking for an end anymore. And I think that's the other cool thing about responsibility and accountability, especially, is that it's your thing, it's your journey, it's your story. It's up to you where that's going to go. And if you focus on it in that way, I feel like it's just so much more encouraging and helpful to just be like, "Oh, okay, this is the way it is. This is how my life is going. What can I do to make the best of it? What can I do to really push myself to be my best, the best version of me?" And I feel like that requires a level of accountability that some people just do not possess, or they don't care to possess, or whatever it is. Um, so I had to realize that I needed help, and no one else was going to get me the help I needed. I had to take those steps. And upon taking those steps, my life slowly started to improve. And I know not everyone has access to the mental health resources that I did. And that's why supporting one another is such an important thing as well, which I can definitely ramble about that for a long time. Um, and doing more so that we can create these opportunities for people to get the resources that they need. I'm very passionate about that as well. But, I want to express that even if you don't have access to everything I might have had access to, and I even didn't have access to some things that other people have access to an extent, you always have the ability to take some authority over your life. And you just have to be self aware and realistic about what extent that is. And that's going to be unique to everybody. So I started working on my mental health, my physical health. I started working on what I want to do with my life, who I want to be, finding out my diagnoses. Who do I want to be? Who am I now, and where do I want to be in the future, or where do I see myself? What's my aspirations in life? Like, what am I here for? What am I here to do? I started thinking more about those things and putting making choices and putting it into action, I guess, like putting those thoughts and the answers I'm coming up with into actions and actual things that I'm doing in my life day to day. And I feel like realizing that accountability was a necessary component to my growth as an individual literally changed the trajectory of my life. If I didn't start thinking about my life in that way, I have no idea where I would be, honestly. I definitely wouldn't be here. Because I would still probably be, you know, blaming myself or blaming others or not doing anything about it. And I think getting over that hurdle of, oh, it's their fault my life sucks and I can't fix it now, or they did this to me, so that's why I have this problem and it's never gonna get better. Um, getting past that and like making any ounce of progress requires that you realize that you can take responsibility for certain things that happened in your life without fully blaming yourself. And then, in an extension of that, realizing that, hey, I can hold, I need to hold myself accountable for my own life. I need to realize that in order to make things better for me, I have to do things for me. I have to live for me. I have to take authority of my life, do as much as I can to make life better for me. And there's countless examples of people doing this all over the world. Like, and people can be in so many different circumstances, but I feel like no matter what circumstance they're in, this is always what the mindset they're creating within themselves, where it's like, some things in my life happened, some things I am responsible for, some things I'm not. But at the end of the day, if I want to be happy, I have to hold myself accountable and do what I need to do to be that person I want to be happy, to make progress, to change. And as an ender, I really wanted to talk about how I feel like that's the big missing piece in like a lot of the relationships I've had in my life. Um, I feel like I'm trying to convey this topic to them, and they're seeing it as an attack or saying that they're not good enough or that I'm perfect and they're not. And it's like, in my mind, I don't see it in those ways. I'm seeing it as these things are happening, and I see where I messed up, I see where you messed up. I'm taking responsibility for what I did wrong, and I'm trying to learn from that. And that's an active process for me. Like, that's never not happening for me. Every day I'm looking at what I did and trying to figure out if I can do it better or what I can learn from it, or how I can approach this better in the future. And that's just what's happening. That's just what I'm doing constantly. So in my mind, I'm always evaluating myself and always testing myself and always challenging myself. So there's never a moment in time where I am not doing that. So like, I'm not sitting there being like, "Oh, I'm perfect. I never mess up. Oh, that I'm just amazing. You need to fix yourself because like I'm perfect." Like, that's never happening because like my mindset has evolved to the point where I'm in a constant state of growth. I'm in a constant state of evaluation. And I think some people just don't understand that. So they see me being so open about talking about my faults and talking about how responsibility can be, shared. This bad thing happened, but we can recognize that, we both contributed to this in different ways, but also realize that it requires us to take a certain amount of accountability that's different because of those discrepancies. Like, I shouldn't be taking or hold myself accountable for, someone else abusing me. Obviously, that wouldn't make any sense. But there are things that I've done. There's habits and behaviors that I might have built up that I can try to change or I can try to do better in the future. And then, the other person, they can be like, "Hey, I realize that, I harmed somebody. I need to hold myself accountable and do what I need to do better." Um, we can all do that. We can support each other in the process of that. And it doesn't have to make any of us feel like we're less than the other. We're just, at different stages in our journey. We have different issues, we have different conflicts, we have different struggles because our lives are different. And we can just come together and we make it work. We make it work from there. And that's how I see a lot of these situations. And that's why it's so hard for me when people feel attacked or they feel like I'm trying to be perfect or I think I have all the answers. No, I'm just in this continuous state of growth. And I'm always judging everything I do, every decision I make, everything that happens, and trying to learn from it. So in my mind, I'm just being honest. Um, I'm being transparent. I'm being an open book, you know? Uh, and to me, I'm not going to think any less of you if you can hold yourself accountable and be like, hey, I messed up. I did this wrong, you know? And, I'm going to do what I need to do better. And if you do that and you say that and you show that, I have so much respect for you. Um, I would not hold a grudge for you for the rest of your life for whatever mistake you made. Obviously, there's an extent to this. There's some horrible things that people can do that, that would definitely, vary. But for the most part, I'm very forgiving. I'm very patient. I try to be understanding. If you show me that you can take responsibility for your actions and then do that next step to hold yourself accountable for the results of your actions and do better, make changes, um, just approach life differently and, learn from this, then I'll respect that. I will respect that fully. And, and I'm even willing to, together, we can work through this. We can uh, work together to make that progress. Even though we're both on different journeys, we can support each other. We can be there for each other. I think that's what makes being human great because we can do that. We can be there for each other in that way that a lot of other animals can't do. And we should be taking advantage of that. But yeah, that's probably going to be it for me. That's all I can think about right now. But that was almost an hour of me rambling about that. So that's it's a pretty good time. Pretty good time. But yeah, as always, I'm always open to talking about any of these topics in more detail on stream or privately if you want to reach out and talk. Um, I think accountability is just so underrated. And a lot of the times in our society, we just allow people to not be accountable for things because it's easier, Being accountable means you have to do the hard work. And no one wants to do the hard work. Well, I won't say no one, but most people don't want to do the hard work. That's threatening. That's scary. It means that you could fail. But I want to try to encourage people to be like, you know, it's okay to fail. It's okay to not be certain. It's okay to question yourself and to think that maybe this is a mistake, maybe this is wrong, or whatever it is. It's okay to go through all those things. I think that, you know, that step of holding yourself accountable and actually taking action is just instrumental in that process of growth as an individual. And I feel like more people really need to explore that within themselves and, instead of being afraid. I think a lot of people are afraid of that. Some people feel like if I take responsibility and hold myself accountable, then I'm a terrible person. I can't recover from this. I'm like, it's over for me. Like, and I think that that's the mentality we need to kind of, get rid of. We need to try and help encourage people to feel like this is a process, there is no end. You know, you mess up and you can keep going. It's all about the way you approach it, the way you handle it, the way you react, the choices you make, the actions you make or take. Um, that's the stuff that makes the difference at the end of the day. That's what makes the actual difference in the end. And there's no end goal. There's no winning. There's no losing. You only lose really if you just don't participate. You don't try. But if you're trying, there is no losing. You might have to keep trying and you might struggle and you might fail. You might get stuck. You might get frustrated. But as long as you're moving along and you're putting in that work, that's respectable, honestly. Um, I would respect that. And I feel like most people would respect that. Um, so I just wish that we lived in a society where accountability was like taught or like explained in kind of the way I'm explaining it so that people would feel like it's something worth investing in. It's not bad to take accountability for messing up. It's not bad to take accountability for being ignorant or making a mistake or, uh, doing something wrong, hurting somebody, harming somebody. If we don't see these as, oh my God, if I take accountability for this, I can't recover. It's over for me, or nothing's ever going to be good in my life again. Like, if we don't make people feel that way and we encourage them to improve and go beyond that, I think that's when life really gets great. That's when life really starts to improve for individuals and all the people around them, around those individuals. It's just that's that process that needs to be done. And I know that a lot of the people who have hurt me will never be held accountable for the things that they've done, but I've definitely held myself accountable for my part in those situations, and I feel like that's helped me make peace. And I hope that for some people, if you don't have someone who's there to hold themselves accountable for their part in things, I hope that you can make peace with, you know, accepting that, you're not fully to blame. And, all you can do is focus on you. That's all you're accountable for at the end of the day. The things you do and the results of what you do. And I think that's basically all I'm going to say for this one. So, appreciate anyone who listened this whole time. If you got this far, it means a lot. And this is really a deep topic for me. I'm really passionate about it. So, I definitely want to talk about this a bit more in the future and be more detailed about some of my experiences where this has come into play. But yeah, that's going to be it for me. So I guess we can just do uh, our outro. Bye, y'all. Catch you in the next one.